morning. How are you? So that person they were talking about, I mean, I guess that was me. But the thing that I really want to focus on today is, wait, I already skipped my first slide, is how many people in the room, by a show of hands, are founders and building companies? Yes? Okay, good. Because every company, I don't care whether you're an enterprise company, whether you are a consumer company, whether you are digital or you're physical or you're everything in between, every company needs to think about the power of harnessing and really building community. Because let me tell you something, community is very serious business. And so when you have a very highly engaged community, that is like a predictor of your future success. Because that means that your people, your tribe, your customers, your early customers are the ones that are going to drive that. And so looking at that, even in the earliest stage of building your business, is a great predictor of that. And word of mouth matters. We know that people are so much more likely to actually trust a brand if they hear it from a friend. And so you have to think about that and how you're going to unlock that. Experience-driven businesses are the businesses that actually will have longer, better ROI, better retention, better lifetime value. 97% of shoppers say, 97, so I don't know who the 3 are, those who don't have, I guess, any access, say that they always read reviews. So reviews are written by the community. 76% of business leaders feel that purpose and meaning is critical to what they stand for. And they want to have that change, and they're not waiting for government to make the change. They're making the change themselves. We can't outsource that to others. And 75% of Americans, I haven't done a survey here, but I'm sure it's very similar, are more likely to buy from brands who contribute positively to society. So we know that all of those factors are factors. But what is community really? Community, and from my perspective, is the new omnichannel. So what is an omnichannel? Well, you have the direct-to-consumer, you have physical retail, you have business-to-business, you have all these different channels of sales and opportunity, but community actually supersets all of it. So a good friend of mine, Oliver Chen, who is an analyst for an investment company called Cowen, he's tracking every new retail and luxury and direct-to-consumer brand, public companies, private companies, early-stage companies, and he thinks about these are like the formulas, the connecting, because that's for convenience, and that's going to increase the frequency in which somebody interacts with your brand. The context, so context creates the right engagement. It creates engagement with people, which increases your loyalty and lowers your churn. And the community is really about the crowdsourcing and crowdsourcing of information. So now that we've sort of established that, how do you do it? Well, it's so much about not what you say about yourself. You can work with your brand agencies. You can work with all kinds of people to write all of your copy and your advertising agencies, et cetera. But at the end of the day, a brand is not what you say. It's really what a friend tells a friend. And so how do you architect those conversations? How do you set up your brands so that you will enable a friend to tell a friend the story that you want to hear and the story you want to get told? So everybody, today is like the playbook. And these are the 6 factors to actually think about how to build authentic communities. So at Brandless, first and foremost, we start with our team. And so this is Lindsay and Garrett and Charlotte. So these are people who are part of our team, and they are where we start with our shared values and intentions. If you are building a company, you can't tell anything to your audience if you don't start with your team. Everything starts with your team, and everything starts with the culture that you build in your team. So even though Lindsay might have been a community manager, or Garrett is a project manager, and Shar was actually our intern, that's what they did, but that's not who they are. So people need to bring their authentic selves to their work, and so that starts with your people. Once you set those values, you say, okay, at Brandless, we believe that living well also means giving back and doing good in the world. Sometimes we inspire that in our community, but we have to start with ourselves. So every time you check out at Brandless, we donate a meal in your honor to Feeding America. So in the US, 40 million people go hungry every single day. So to date, we've donated just under 4 million meals, but that's with every checkout, and we're just getting started. We're also a company that deeply believes in sustainability, so we have to think about not just the products that we make, but also the way in which we ship. So one of our team members noticed that the earth-friendly diapers that we were shipping were actually coming in boxes. We were taking them out of the boxes, and they were putting them into brandless boxes. We said, well, that doesn't make sense. So we took the boxes from the manufacturer that came to our warehouses, we put a sticker on it and said, we're going to reuse this box because we don't want to use another box. And then the boxes that we do ship, we actually put a big instructions to say, don't throw me out, make me a welcome mat, put food in here and take it to a food bank. Like, here are all the ways to upcycle everything that we're doing. The boxes are part of that story. So if you think about sustainability and that's your brand and that's your culture, think about every piece of the delivery of that and why that makes sense. But I would ask you as founders, like, what do you believe in? That's our belief system, that you put people first, that you give back every time. It's not just something you do once a year or around the holidays. And sustainability at its core, no matter what we do. So let's look at a company like Airbnb. As you may have heard, we have a little tricky thing in America right now where maybe not everybody agrees with our leadership. But like I said, founders have to stand up for what they believe in. And so when the travel bans came out, Airbnb took out advertising to say that they are offering free accommodations to people because they could not do that travel ban. And we didn't accept that because Airbnb said, we accept that. So Chesky said, this is my value system, and this is what my company stands for. Patagonia, similarly, they're telling me, look, tell Congress there is no room for government in climate issues. So regardless of what the government is saying, CEOs are standing up for what they believe in. Nike is the same. There's different political conversations that are going on around the world. We have a football player named Colin Kaepernick, and he has a belief system, and maybe not everybody believes in that belief system, but Nike says, we're going to get behind you. And in different regions, in different countries, they're getting behind all of the things that stand for what their athletes stand for, because they are behind the culture that they believe in, and the CEO and the company is not afraid to do that. So that is really thinking about how your values and your intentions, they're going to strengthen your brand loyalty because it's authentic, because truth, trust, and transparency needs to be there. The second thing I would say is nurture your tribe. So who's your tribe? This is Gwenna. When we first started Brandless, which was only a little more than 2 years ago, Gwenna showed up. She showed up maybe on Facebook, and she said, hey, I run a group in LA called the Vegans of LA. And my group loves what you're doing. And literally, this was like on day 2. So we invited Gwenna, when we went and did our pop-up in LA, to bring those Vegans of LA in. And we gave them first looks, first access, and we had them give us all of their feedback that we then gave to the team. But there were lots of Gwennas who were running lots of different communities, and we met them all. We met them all in person, or we met them virtually, and we said, come on in. Because all of these people lead to their communities. So when we were thinking about going into earth-friendly pet products, we said, do you think our community likes pets? Well, of course, who doesn't? That on the bottom, that's Tessa, my dog. But we had to say, what are you doing in your lives, and how can we be supportive to you? And so they're making the content, but they're really part of our community. So I would ask you as a founder, have you found your people? How are you nurturing them? You have to ask yourself that question every single day. So for example, you may know Thing Testing. Jenny, who I think used to be the CMO of SLUSH and is a big part of the community here, she is, in my opinion, and full disclosure, I just invested in her company because I think she's awesome. She's becoming like the Consumer Reports for the next generation. And she's using Instagram as the start for how she's curating brands. But her tribe, the people who she's closest to, she's using like the close friends feature on Instagram as like her MVP. And so those people are getting access to the things that not everybody is getting, because she's using that and she's trying to nurture her community that way and making sure that she's scaling it. We have another brand in the US called The Skim. That is a daily newspaper where they are digesting the news of the day. But you would say, okay, well, how is a newspaper or how is news and information nurturing their tribe? Well, guess what? They started something called Skimbassadors. And so if you're a Skimbassador, maybe your birthday gets at the bottom of the newsletter, but you also get rewarded for spreading it. And so they even have Oprah, who's one of their Skimbassadors, and they're spreading the news using their tribe and nurturing them and making sure they feel seen to do that. So it's impossible to build anything unless you have a passionate and authentic engagement, because that leads to deep and lasting relationships. People feel like they're part of something. Okay, number 3. You need to enable what we call like the network effect, meaning that your community is going to spread to broader communities. So here's an example of that. One day, we noticed that somebody posted and tagged Brandless on Instagram with this orange, was like a brownie mix. And we thought, I wonder why they're tagging that. What does that have to do with Brandless? Well, it turns out that this is a camping idea. So you take an orange and you scoop out the inside, and they were using at the time, our gluten-free brownie mix. You put it on the campfire, and it makes the brownie in the open fire. Okay. Why am I telling you that, and what does that have to do with network effects? Well, when we noticed it, we're like, that's really interesting. I love that idea. And all of a sudden, people started to tag their friends, and tag their friends, and tag their friends, and saying, like, this is something, let's do it this weekend. Come, let's do this. So this doesn't look like anything visually interesting, but the network effect, within a few hours, we had thousands and thousands and thousands of people who were tagging their friends to come and do this on their next trip. So you're enabling that by asking people to come along. It's the most amazing thing. I'm saving it. I want to try it. Let's do it. So you think inside the comments of Instagram is a network effect? Absolutely. Because people are using all of their platforms to bring their friends and tell their stories, but you need to enable that. So I would ask you, what are you doing to think and unlock a movement? There's so many different things in networks. There's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's Instagram, there's TikTok. There's a million things, and they're proliferating every single day. And so there's a company in the US started by a friend of mine, Gina Bianchini, who started a company called Mighty Networks. What is Mighty Networks? It's actually a platform to help you proliferate your content, your story, your community across all these different networks. So she's actually supersetting that and allowing you to build your community wherever they live. Because community, you have to go to them. They're not necessarily going to come to you. There's another brand called Bumble. It started out as a dating app where women were in charge, but then they started these Bumble ambassadors. They called them Queen Bees. And these Queen Bees, within 3 years, actually helped them build to 26 million users. So these are the women that brought in other women, that brought in other women, and they had parties, they had pop-ups, they had gatherings, and Bumble enabled that, but the Queen Bees actually helped build that brand. So that's a network effect. LinkedIn, I'm sure you've heard of that. So it's very hard. There are a lot of companies that, when I've been investing in other things, that say, oh, we're going to be the next LinkedIn. But it's very hard to break a company that has such a strong network, because it's not so much about LinkedIn, it's about the people that are on LinkedIn and the connectivity that's there. And so network effects, if they're scaled and engaged, they have lower acquisition costs because friends are getting friends, and they build what's called a defensible moat. So you think about a castle and a moat. So you want to be able to protect your community so that somebody can't create the next one. And so communities that have deep network effects, they're very, very defensible, because that moat is actually going to stop other brands and other communities from disrupting them. Because if people are there, not only would you have to move, you'd have to take your whole community with you. So next, thinking about creating collaborations, you want to co-create your experience with your community. Now, the important point here is that you really need to architect this. So at Brandless, for example, we have lots of different people in our community, and we're doing lots of different things together. But we noticed from the day we started the company that we started to get texts, emails, messages saying, when are you going to do things for earth-friendly baby diapers, earth-friendly baby toiletries? So we said, OK, we're on it. But it took us about 18 months to actually develop those earth-friendly diapers. And before we launched them, we said, what would you like to see on them? And then we did a contest where they could pick the patterns. So when we launched those earth-friendly diapers, we knew the community was waiting. And we literally wrote handwritten notes, thousands and thousands of them, to all the people who've been asking us since day one. Then we met Britton. She was a dietitian, and she started giving us all these ideas for how to use our wonderful nutritional powders in the morning for different meals, etc. So then we pulled her in. And then she said, what about a blender? Because having a great blender is a critical part of living this type of lifestyle. And so we actually went out, because a very good blender, there's a company called Vitamix, is very, very expensive. And so part of the brandless value proposition is to make very high quality things at much more affordable prices. So we developed the blender and we developed the powders. And then Britton gave us all of her recipes. And so we pulled those recipes into Brandless. We pulled those recipes onto our site, into our blog, onto our social platforms. And we are basically co-creating alongside her. So you really have to think to yourself, what are you co-creating alongside your community? So in the case of Airbnb, not only do they have the houses and the rooms, they're co-creating experiences, because they realized that they had these very engaged hosts that wanted to open up their homes. But those hosts also understand, the inside track of Helsinki, or the design experience in a country, or the best way, the farmers that are doing interesting things. Even in San Francisco, I can go on an Airbnb experience, even though I live there. And I went out to UC Davis, which is one of the top agricultural schools, and we spent an afternoon with a beekeeper, because that was an Airbnb experience. Rent the Runway does a similar thing, where yes, they have the dresses, but the reviews of, am I tall, am I short, how does it look, what am I doing? So critical is to enable your community to co-create alongside you in obvious and non-obvious ways. Then we also think it's critically important to spotlight the people in your community. So at Brandless, it's not just about the products, it's about the people. So they send us their good news stories, and we promote them as good news stories. And they promote it, and they promote it, and so on. So how are you celebrating that in your community? Ipsy is one of the largest beauty communities in the US, and we are unlocking your inner beauty. But what's critical is to say, who are the people that are telling their stories? And these are some of our ambassadors who we literally met because they were part of our community, and now we're putting them back into our advertising to scale that. Peloton, an inside bike. So you say, how is that a community? How are we spotlighting people? Well, your engineers have to build that into the product. So at Peloton, the teachers, when they're teaching the classes that are on the screens that you're live doing, even if you're alone in your basement, if this is your 500th ride, they're doing a shout out to you. MV Tina, Mill Valley, which is where I live, they're like, 100th ride, way to go. And they're telling those stories because it's built into it. So everybody matters, everybody wants to feel seen, and you have to really promote that. For example, creating experiences in real life. So at Brandless, we do pop-ups, and we go and we meet our experience. This was a store that we built in New York for a few weeks, and then we sit and we talk to our people. We have interactive dialogues. We go in the aisles. We show the products. And then people put that on Instagram. We didn't create these shots, but they come in and they have these experiences. How are you bringing your 5 senses to life? Sweet Greens, which is like an organic to-go salad bar, they have music festivals. Casper, which is making fantastic, Gentle Monster, you may not have heard of them. They're an Asian eyeglass brand, but you can find their eyeglasses in art galleries that they're building to show that. Casper, a sleep brand, a mattress brand, they have sleep pods when you go into their physical spaces. Vans, which is making sneakers, they're having skateboard festivals around the world. The Assembly, which is a co-working space in San Francisco. In the top floor, there's co-working. In the basement, they have fitness going all the time because it's a women's co-working space and women want to work out as part of their routine. And then at night, they have talks and they bring people in. Brit & Co., a creativity site for creativity on the internet, is doing maker festivals, and people like Tyra Banks and others are coming to give those talks. Story was bought by Macy's. It's like a magazine, but it's in a store. And every month, they change their story. And so people are coming in and they're bringing those experiences to real life. So critically important is to show up, is to experiment with multisensory experiences. Think of it like a lab. So what did we learn in those 6 factors? First, we learned that shared values and intentions are going to strengthen brand loyalty. Then we learned that truth, trust, and transparency leads to authentic and very deep relationships. Scaled and engaged communities, it's going to lower your acquisition costs, remember, and it's going to build that moat around your business. enable your community to contribute in obvious and non-obvious ways. Everybody matters. Everyone wants to feel seen. Everyone wants to feel like they're part of it. And then show up. Get out there in real life and experiment with multisensory experiences. Because at the end, movements, they are never built alone. And so no matter what you're building, consumer, enterprise, physical, virtual, you've got to do it alongside the people you exist to serve. Thank you.